that maybe it was less likely to go bad if someone saw a pregnant woman doing this. They wouldn't pull out a gun and shoot her, maybe.
There's no telling what they thought or why they did it, but it's just the willingness to where you're about to pop those babies out, pregnant with twins. She's a little girl, right?
Yeah.
So she's pregnant as hell, wobbling around. And just the fact that you would do that 9 months pregnant says a lot, right?
They're both busted, and like I said, Judith bore her twins in jail, or what was known as the Youth Development Center.
Yeah, right. Isn't that in Rome, Georgia?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's counting down the days until she can rejoin her husband on the road. After giving birth to twins, she named those twins Jeremy and April. The children were temporarily given to Alvin's mother while both parents were incarcerated. Now, while serving time, Judith wrote letters to Alvin describing horrific abuse at the hands of the YDC employees.
So she's staying in contact with him, and she's telling him that she's being molested or raped by employees.
Yes.
Of the youth center.
She told him she was raped, abused. They were doing all these terrible things to her. Alvin, in return, was writing Judith letters saying things like she made him mad, and when she angered him, she put herself in danger.
Oh, okay. I'm going to threaten you through the mail.
Yeah.
Good job, Alvin.
It's just very strange. Now, Judith would state that when they were both released from jail, they moved in with Alvin's mother and their kids. She said the first few hours of seeing Alvin were great. I mean, he seemed really happy to be with her, but soon he wanted to have sex, and then he grew angry, saying she had been ruined by all the men she'd slept with while she was locked up.
She's outlining being abused. That's not consensual. They're forcing themselves on me. That's what she's saying. And what an asshole, this guy.
Right. On the other side of the coin, I'm wondering if maybe she was having sex with people at the YDC and then claiming she was raped so he wouldn't be mad.
Well, I mean, there's that too. She could have just not told him about the sex.
Yeah, I don't know.
Again, I think it gets into they have to filter things through each other.
He started beating her with a wooden plunger stick, hitting her harder and harder every time she screamed, and his mother was in the next room, and Judith claimed his mother never offered to help, and that the next morning her face was badly beaten.
All right.
However, there are witnesses who would later dispute Judith's claims of being abused, that would say, I never saw her with any bruises or marks on her face or any part of her body.
Okay.
Upon release, Al found work in a gas station, and he stayed long enough to get his hands on $1,800 from the till, stealing that, using it to buy 2 cars, a Dodge Charger, and a Granada, equipped with CB radios.
Hey, yeah. So he just works a regular job long enough to get an opportunity to rob the damn place. What an asshole.
Alvin became the night rider, while Judith billed herself as Lady Sundance. So again, for people who are not familiar with CB radios, these were in people's trucks, vehicles, but you had a handle, like a CB handle, much like whatever your username would be today.
Yeah, it's exactly what it's like.
Yeah. And so that's how you communicated. So your identity was somewhat anonymous. You would just be known by this moniker, like. Now, if new acquaintances missed the point, she was quick to enlighten them. Like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, I guess is how she would kind of play off this name or whatever.
So now they got 2 cars. Well, one of them's cool. I don't know if the Granada's as cool. But so they got this nice Charger, and it's Granada, and now they're riding around talking to each other on the CBs between the 2 cars.
Well, and I should also bring up a detail that I left out of the story, but since we're talking about the cars, Alvin insisted they have 2 vehicles because he refused to ride with her.
Now, I think this is, you explained this to me as we were discussing this. It's very important to make this distinction.
Now, Judith was 16, and she demanded, she wanted to drive. She's young, just got her license, or maybe not. So she wants to have that freedom and power and control of driving the vehicle, right? But Alvin can't stand riding in Judith's cars because she's filthy.
And he's a bit of a neat freak.
He is like an OCD neat freak. They said his vehicle was pristine. It looked like it had just been driven off a showroom floor. He kept it immaculately clean, perfect. And that her vehicle was littered with trash, just clothes, nasty. She never vacuumed it. Like, she was just disgusting. And Alvin hated to be in a car with her because he said he just couldn't stand it. She was so dirty.
So it's like having their separate spaces. They both want to drive probably. And, so that's weird, but that's why they're in two vehicles.
Right. And it was after Judith's release from the youth center that a teacher named Ken Dooley had an attack at his home. Make a long story short, he was shot 4 times, but survived.
Yeah, I believe this was in 82, right? This is kind of the beginning. They've been doing this petty crime and all this stuff, God knows what, all this time. This is where the story really starts to build up to the end, right?
And he had received some phone calls from an anonymous person claiming that he had raped her while she was in custody at the Youth Development Center.
Yeah, and basically like you're going to pay.
Right. And he was like, he didn't know who it was. I mean, he's like, I haven't done anything. What are you talking about? But he ends up being shot 4 times. He survives. Now, a caller would later claim that Dooley was targeted again because of the rape she had suffered while in custody. And only a day later, a woman named Linda Adair would become a victim of retaliation. A Molotov cocktail made from a new grape drink bottle full of gasoline with a rag stuffed in it would be thrown into her home.
Yeah, I listened to an interview, and it's like she just hears a clunk, a window break, and a clunk, and she can literally hear the bottle rolling around. Which, I mean, if you're sitting in your home, you're like, what the hell is that? And next thing you know, everything's on damn fire.
Again, a caller had told Adair it was punishment for what had happened when she was at the youth center. Adair, Dooley, I mean, they're just baffled. They're like, what? We haven't done anything. What the hell is this? A witness saw a car fleeing from the scene of the Adair house fire. It was a sporty brown car with silver striping, driven by a woman who had reddish-brown hair. A man was in the vehicle with her.
Ruh-roh.
When robbery and swindles became boring, the couple began seeking kicks elsewhere. The Neelleys would execute a plan to murder for the hell of it. Alvin would later blame Judith for most of the crimes, fingering her for 8 to 15 homicides, committed in her alleged role as a procurer and enforcer for an interstate white slave ring. That's his side of the story.
Oh, that's a pretty strong accusation there.
Judith, for her part, counters that she acted only under orders from her husband, luring women for Alvin to rape and abuse, participating in their murders under Alvin's standing threat against her children.
Yeah, I think it's common a lot of times with these couples that a thrill kill very often is their first murder. Just to like you said, to one-up it or step it up a notch or just to see what it's like. Isn't that weird when people say that? I just did it to see what it was like.
Yeah.
To kill a person. That's pretty crazy.
It's next level. Police accept the body count of 15 victims as a reasonable figure, though they've come up short on verifying remains. Alvin would claim later that he and Judith killed 3 women in Macon, Georgia, 3 in Columbus, and 2 in Dothan, Alabama. But we're going to get into that later in the story. Are you ready for this tale to take a twisted turn, Dylan?
Yes, I am.
The first documented victim was 13-year-old Lisa Milliken, abducted on September 25th, 1982, from a shopping mall in Rome, Georgia. Lisa was a resident of the Ethel Harpst Home for Neglected Children. Lisa was enjoying a day's outing when she meets Judith Neelley at Aladdin's Arcade in the mall. Do you remember Aladdin's Arcade? It was a chain. A lot of malls had these. It was like if you were a kid or a teenager in the 80s, this is where you were going to hang out.
Yeah, I don't remember if our local one was called Aladdin's Arcade, but I knew the arcade was the place to be in the mall.
Exactly, but Aladdin's was just a big chain, so I thought that maybe you were familiar with it. Some of our listeners of a certain age might be. The plan was to lure the girl into Alvin's clutches. Lisa Milliken, let's get into her background a little bit because it's just such a tragic story. Lisa was born in 1969, and she suffered from a really hard life. She was abused by her father beginning at the age of 11, which had caused her to be moved into the group home about a month before this event happens. The poor girl was at the home through no fault of her own, but because she was a victim. The little girl had lived in dire poverty, at points living in a car with her mom and siblings, plus being sexually abused by her dad. She was a small girl with a brown shag haircut. Judith would later say that Lisa reminded her of Joni from Happy Days, a popular TV show at the time, which attracted Judith to this girl.
Now, is this in the same town?
This is in Rome, Georgia.
So this young girl is in the same youth development center group home, maybe? Or I don't think that was ever outlined, was it?
Well, honey, she's in the Ethel Harps
group
home.
Okay.
She's not in a youth development center.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I don't know where you got that, but I'll correct you. That's not accurate.
I'm sorry.
The couple took the girl with them to a motel in Franklin, Georgia, where they held her prisoner for several days, repeatedly raping and sodomizing her.
That's torture.
So initially, Judith just lures her out like, hey, you want to come hang out? We'll go get something to eat. We'll party. I'm not that much older than you. Like, let's be friends.
Yeah, so devious.
Yeah.
It really is.
The day after they kidnapped her, the pair picked up their twin children, then traveled to a seedy motel in Scottsboro, Alabama. Judith beat the girl with a stick until she passed out. Then Alvin raped the girl again while their kids were looking on.
Now, how disgusting is that?
Lisa, nude, was kept tied to either the bed or held in the floor with her hands tied to the bed. The next morning, 250-pound Alvin raped the child again. Then they tied her up in the bathroom, and Alvin raped her one last time that afternoon. Tiring of the game, the next day, the couple drove around with Lisa tied up in their car, trying to find a good spot to kill the girl.
Yeah, but tie her up and put her in your car, and I'll put the twins in my car. Fucking weirdos, man.
Well, eventually, Judith is going to travel to Fort Payne, Alabama, to the Little River Canyon. She's got Lisa in the car tied up, along with her twins.
I just don't even know how you are able to do that as a human being.
Now, at this time, the Little River Canyon was known to locals as a spooky spot. The road leading out to the National Park Reserve is treacherous, pretty steep and winding, and at the time, the metal guardrail was bent and missing in places from wrecks, which had occurred from this snaking road. And there were a lot of rumors circulating that the canyon was a popular spot for devil worshippers to carry out their ghoulish rituals. It was also known as a dumping ground for bodies and a hideout for criminals, lunatics, and hermits.
Yeah, and see, when Lisa goes missing from the mall, they just think she's investigators initially think she's just run away. Which I think in this instance, you got a troubled girl in a group home. That's not a bad assumption. She's probably just mad, acting out, maybe run away. But unfortunately, she's in the grips of in the clutches of these monsters.
When the couple finally settle on the right place, a location which is kind of near a picnic area pull-off, Judith forced Lisa out of the car. Initially, Judith tried injecting Lisa with a syringe filled with Drano and liquid plumber. But she kept hitting muscle instead of veins, reducing Lisa's flesh to what a coroner would later say was the consistency of anchovy paste.
My God, imagine the pain this poor girl's experiencing. She keeps missing her vein, which likely would have killed her if it hit the vein, and just making this chemical reactions in her muscle, just liquefying basically her damn muscle. Oh, my God.
The girl was stabbed 6 times with a needle in her arms, legs, her side, and buttocks. Still, Lisa lived, and in agony, when Judith finally finished her off with bullets, pulling out a pistol and shooting Lisa in the back of the head. Judith then rolled her body off an embankment where it would get hung up on a tree. Judith's children, they were in the car sleeping while Lisa was being murdered.
Yeah, these people are so disgusting.
Lisa's blood splattered on Judith's pants, so she changed into a different pair of jeans, throwing the bloody pair down by Lisa's body, along with the syringes that she had used. Judith knew she had to do it. She had to kill this girl because there was no way the mother was going to go back to that youth development center to serve more time. If Lisa lived, she would be a witness, and that just simply could not happen. This is Judith's rationale.
Here's a crazy idea. Don't kidnap, torture, and murder a girl. Maybe you don't do that and you won't have to go back to jail.
Back in Rome, Judith made several calls to the police, directing them to the body, apparently unaware that her voice was being recorded. Now, initially, police thought perhaps it was a prank call. It took 2 trips out to the location